Hello, my name is Caroline Reed, and I am a candidate for the Master of Science in Education for Building Level Leader, working on my principal licensure at Henderson State University. I received a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish in 2004 and Master of Arts in Teaching in 2006. Both of those also came from Henderson State University. I'm currently a Spanish teacher at Arkadelphia High School. This is my 15th year teaching at Arkadelphia High School, as well as my 15th year total experience. And I teach Spanish to students in grades 9 through 12. I would like to take this time to thank my mentors, David Maxwell, principal at Arkadelphia High School, and Callie Hunley, principal at Louisa E. Parrott Primary School, also in Arkadelphia. They have both been wonderful and took so much time to help me and guide me through my internship, and for that I'm so thankful and appreciative. Standard 1, Element 1.1, which talks about collaboratively developing, articulating, implementing, and stewarding a shared vision of learning for the school. The artifact that I chose for this particular standard was the Vision Walk, which I did in the Supervision and Educational Leadership class with Dr. Jenkins. The first thing that I did was first I gathered stakeholders from various backgrounds, including students, teachers, community members, parents, and tried to get them from different backgrounds as well. And we met together last summer and we discussed the steps for developing a mission. Before we even did that, though, the very first thing that we did was we identified some things that they saw as current issues that were taking place within this school. And from there, we decided to have this conversation on how we would develop a shared vision for the school. And before we did that, we had to define vision so that everyone had a working knowledge of how this would operate. And we discussed how to articulate that vision. How would they know when they walked into the building? How is it going to be implemented? And who would be the steward of that vision? One of the things that the stakeholders discussed is they really appreciate and would like communication with regard to things that are going on in the school. And that needs to come from me, the building leader. So we did discuss those types of issues. Another thing that we discussed is how could the principal of a school communicate the fact that we're working towards this shared vision to the stakeholders. So we discussed social media, sending letters home. It could even be a newsletter going through the parental engagement facilitator, and social media, even a short YouTube video, just giving an update to the stakeholders on where we are and how we are getting there. Standard 1.2 talked about collecting and using data to identify school goals, assess organizational effectiveness, and implement plans to achieve school goals. So the artifact that I chose for this particular standard is the School Excellence Survey, which was completed in my organizational leadership course that I took with Dr. Weaver. The first thing when we got this assignment for me was trying to determine which mode I wanted to use to complete this survey. I could have done it on paper, and I had the option also to do it through Google Forms or SurveyMonkey. To me, those were the only two that I knew about at that time as far as surveying um, options through electronic mode. And um, I decided to go with SurveyMonkey because of the fact that I felt like it was more secure, that people would trust it more as far as maintaining anonymity throughout the entire survey, because I wanted people to be honest with their responses. Uh, Regarding those responses, the results were somewhat surprising to me. It's easy to keep in mind the things that we hear negatively coming from people, because those are usually the loudest remarks that we hear. But what it taught me was to really understand that there are probably a lot more people on the side of the school, and we have a lot more support than what we may have initially and thought to be. Another thing that this taught me was really about disaggregating the data and understanding how that actually works. We are, especially in the age of um, looking at report cards online, and this shows us, we can go on and we can compare ourselves with other school districts. All stakeholders can do that, and so it's important to be able to do that, look at where are we lacking and what can we do to help improve student achievement. What is it that we're doing that could be impacting this student achievement? So that's a couple of the things that I really appreciated with this particular activity. The next standard, element 1.3, talked about promoting continual and sustainable school improvement. The artifact that I chose for this particular standard was a research paper that I did about sustaining school and community efforts to enhance outcomes for children, which was in the School and Community Relations and Resources course with Mr. Don Benton. So as I did research and prepared this paper, one of the things that I learned was how important it is to collaborate with the community in order to maintain continual and sustainable improvement. And there may be many programs and options available to students, yet they're not really feasible because of budgeting issues. So it's important that the principals maintain a good, positive working relationship with the community in order to perhaps work towards getting some of those programs introduced in the schools so that we could collaborate together between different groups and organizations as well as with the school. There may be policy changes and sometimes even infrastructure changes that need to take place, yet that cannot always be something that is done strictly by the school. So again, those partnerships with the community, it just requires collaboration. Another thing that principals need to look at is what this school should look like at its peak performance, and use Deming's plan, do, study, act cycle of continuous improvement. Just implement that throughout any decisions that we make within the building. And how does that in turn affect what we're doing, for instance, with the Every Student Succeeds Act? And then how can we bring in Charlotte Danielson's tests format that we use for evaluating teachers in order to help them improve? Again, everyone working together for the student as a whole and helping them to succeed. Standard 2.1 talks about sustaining a school culture and instructional program conducive to student learning through collaboration, trust, and personalized learning environment with the high expectations for students. The artifact that I chose for this standard was my action research project, which was conducted during the Research for Educational Practitioners course with Mr. Don Benton. The topic of my research project was on chronic absenteeism. I knew that we had a problem with absenteeism in our building, and it really wasn't until I delved into this project and started looking at nationwide numbers before I understood that this is not just something that was specific to my school or even my state. This is a nationwide issue. And I learned a lot through this project. Number one, and documenting and putting this down on papers, I think that helped. So what I did was I created just sign-in sheets for my students at the beginning of the year, and we signed in every single day. Each student that was in class signed in, and then if they weren't there, that way I had that spreadsheet and I could show the students on paper, this is what you're missing, at how many days you're missing. And that really helped them to have a visual and then start understanding when we're bringing up school report cards, your attendance matters. Every day that you miss class, this is content that you're missing, and then start adding those days up for each class, how much instructional time they were really missing and why it's so important for them to be in school. And so I spoke with those students that I had attendance issues with and tried to guide them and help them to do better. And it was something that I believed we could look at this in the future and say, here's evidence after we have looked at their intervention plans. Here's evidence of how this positively impacted the students once we were able to intervene and give them some tools that they could use to help them to be accountable to themselves. Standard 2, Element 2.2 talked about creating and evaluating a comprehensive, rigorous, and coherent curricular instructional school program. I chose classroom observations from supervision and educational leadership with Dr. Jenkins. One thing to note is I did take this course during the summer, and that kind of impacted the fact that I couldn't do classroom observations, but it did not hinder my ability to go back and look at lesson plans and student work as I was enrolled in the course. I have the privilege of working in a school where we use ECHO, which is a learning management system that we use as part of being a new tech school. And I was able to go back and look at old agendas from teachers' classrooms. And within those agendas, we can see these are the lesson plans essentially that we do and how they tie to the curriculum. We know that curriculum, how that curriculum ties to the standards, the state standards, and then how does that work with vertical teaming as we talk about what they need to do to get ready for the next level. So we could look at the rigor that's there. Are we actually preparing the students? Does it tie to the standards? And then look at the student product, the work that they're submitting to their instructors. We could also look at that and see. With this, another thing that this relates to is tests. If someone is not producing, we can use these test evaluations to help identify goals to help the teachers improve. And if the teachers improve, in turn, the student achievement will go up. Standard 2, Element 2.4 discusses promoting the most effective and appropriate technologies to support teaching and learning in a school environment. The artifact that I chose for this standard were my technology interviews, and that was in the course Technology for School Leaders with Mr. Don Benton. One of the things that I gained an appreciation for through these interviews was understanding the magnitude of the expenses involved with upgrading technology or simply doing regular maintenance to the systems that are already in place, and then understanding the support that entails. We know that there is a great need for technology. I actually work in a school where we have a multitude of different types of technology available to students, which is getting them ready for the workforce and being in a global workforce, and then the range of availability for these students. And is it something that they, like in my school where they have a one-to-one, do they get to take computers home? How do we monitor this? And so there's a great deal of collaboration with the technology, and then teaching the students to be responsible, and then teaching the teachers to be able to utilize the technology that is available to them. With Standard 3.2 and understanding and efficiently using human, physical, and technological resources to manage school operations, I chose the coding exercise that we did in school finance and resources management with Dr. Darden. It was so interesting to understand and actually know what all these numbers mean when I'm going to make a deposit for my activity fund, and then learning the source of all of these numbers, this set of 21 digits. I really appreciated that, and I appreciated having access to the way that the funding is set up through the state level and the accountability that is in place. And so this was just because we did learn about how important it is, and to not be fiscally irresponsible, which in turn it also coincided with some other lessons that I've learned during the year. And so I really appreciated this particular exercise. In fact, even some coworkers were asking me about how things are coded and where certain funds come from. So it was very beneficial. Standard 3.4 with developing school capacity for distributed leadership. I chose my PLC activities from my principal internship with Dr. Jenkins for this artifact. As far as distributed leadership, one of the things that I can appreciate that we've done this year is within our PLC groups is identifying goals, things that we wanted to improve on, not only for ourselves but as the school, and we all collaborate on how we can achieve those goals. One of those things of understanding that everyone has a responsibility within the school, it really also helped to help the teachers feel appreciated. So instead of trying to be a one person over the entire system, giving a little bit of responsibility to everyone, it really will help them to take ownership of the school. 3.5 discussed ensuring teacher and organizational time focuses on supporting high quality school instruction and student learning. One of the things, the artifact that I chose for this particular standard were the surveying tools that we learned about in technology for school leaders with Mr. Don Benton. These tools that we learned, again, with saving time and organizing this time, I really appreciated learning more about how to survey people and get feedback, and using different types of tools, involving the stakeholders in the process and maintaining that transparency within the school, so that again we're all working towards providing a high quality education to our students. For Standard 4, Element 4.1, where candidates have to collaborate with faculty and community members by collecting and analyzing information pertinent to the improvement of the school's educational environment, I chose for my artifact a school website, which was for organizational leadership that I took with Dr. Weaver. I appreciated this activity in which we had to create a school website, and understanding all of the details that are included in a school website, from recognizing and identifying all of the state required information, and then knowing that it has to be easily available and must be in a place where stakeholders can easily access this information. So knowing that it needed to be user friendly. This task was much more difficult than I initially thought that it would be, just because it was very specific and understanding the work that actually goes behind making sure that you meet all of the state requirements for those websites, while also showcasing your school and making it something that is a commercial for people who may be interested in coming to your school district. And then also providing ways for two-way communication within that website. So I really appreciated this activity. For Standard 4, Element 4.2, in which I needed to understand, appreciate, and get to know my community, the diversity of the community in which I live and work. I chose the artifact as my artifact, the school community profile, which was in School and Community Relations and Resources with Mr. Don Benton. One of the things that I did here is I had to look for information from various sources, not just test scores. It was understanding through the entire community what the makeup is of the people, from salaries to race to ethnic backgrounds and education levels, and then what types of businesses are available in the community, really getting to know the community as a whole. And if one does not know the community in which he or she works, then it's nearly impossible to build productive relationships with those community members. So this one was really good, and I was able to identify various community resources and then understand the place in which not only I live and teach students, but will expect to have my family come through and produce high quality learning for those students as well. Standard 4.3 dealt with building and sustaining positive school relationships with families and caregivers. And the artifact that I chose for this particular standard was activities that I did during the course of the year serving as the parent and family engagement facilitator. This was through my principal internship with Dr. Jenkins. One thing that I had to do at the beginning of the year was form a parent committee and find parents of students from different backgrounds, whether it was race, gender, socioeconomic status, just trying to find a diverse group of parents. And we got together, we planned some activities, really trying to promote our school during American Education Week. And then I also attended a conference in Conway, which was the Spring 2019 conference, in which they gave us lots of useful tools that we could use to help engage families more throughout the year. Standard 5, Element 5.1, dealt with integrity and fairness to ensure that schools are accountable for every student's academic and social success. And the artifact that I chose for this was the review of the court cases that we did in special education law with Dr. Woodall. I really appreciated having these court cases to go through and really evaluate and reflect on these cases. What was their significance to education as a whole? How can I relate the situations that took place within these court cases? Have I ever encountered situations such as these that we studied? And what can I do as a building leader to ensure that I don't end up in court for something that could have easily been prevented by simply meeting the needs of these students and following the law? So I really appreciated that activity as well. Standard 5, Element 5.2 dealt with self-awareness, reflective practice, transparency, and ethical behavior. And I chose the Code of Ethics project that we did in educational law and political systems with Dr. Cochran for this particular artifact. I really can appreciate what the basic principles of ethical behavior are and the significance that teachers and educators in general, their behavior, the impact that that can have on the school, the students, everyone in the community. I am um, very strongly, um, I feel very strongly and discuss this each year with my students that we are humans, we make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. And so reflecting on that, but also understanding that we as educators have a legal obligation to do things correctly and behave. And understanding that we don't want to do anything that would bring negative light on the district. Certainly don't want to end up on the news, those sorts of things. So I really, I liked interviewing different educators with different levels. So just to kind of get an idea on what they believe. And I think that was interesting because there were varied responses to the questions as I interviewed those instructors. So it was very beneficial. Standard 5, Element 5.4 dealt with the potential moral and legal consequences of decision making in the schools. So the artifact that I chose for this particular standard were the stakeholder interviews that we conducted in school finance and resource management with Dr. Darden. One of the things that I realized through the course of these interviews was the fact that so many stakeholders had a lack of knowledge of how the fiscal operations functioned within a district. And not only just fiscally, but did not understand the whole concept of board meetings, and how policies come about and how decisions are made. And so I really appreciated that aspect and getting to know that. And then also being able to tell those stakeholders after the interviews where they could find particular pieces of information that they may want to know about. And it also helped me to understand that we probably do need to improve our communication with our stakeholders. So not just in the district in which I'm employed, but statewide, possibly nationwide, because I'm sure that that little group of people is not the only group of people who are unaware of how things work. So by them being more aware of how budgets work, how decisions are made, then that can help them to keep boards in check without having to worry about whether their board is going to make a decision that could be some kind of moral issue or cause disdain within the district among the employees, and even potentially have legal consequences of poor decisions that are made. Standard 6.1 dealt with advocating for school students, families, and caregivers. The artifact that I chose for this is the building level leader interview that I conducted during the Educational Law and Political Systems course with Dr. Cochran. I appreciated, as I interviewed my principal, the insight that he gave me on ensuring that safety is the first thing on your mind, and as a building leader, and the fact that parents are sending their children to us and expect them back in the same conditions. So we have to do everything that we can as building leaders to ensure that those students are being kept safe. And then another point that he brought up that I really appreciated was taking time to reflect on certain issues and not being quick to answer immediately. Take it home, think about it, dwell on it for a little while, and someone doesn't have to have the answer right away. And how would a specific decision impact our students and families, just basically all of the stakeholders, making sure that it's in the best interest of the school and the best interest of our students. And then anytime one should have any questions or concerns, don't be worried to contact the Arkansas School Board Association legal department and get in contact with those attorneys to get legal advice so as not to make any kind of decision that would negatively impact the school or cause legal issues for them. 6.3, anticipating and assessing emerging trends. For this artifact, I chose Arkansas Codes activity that we did in educational law and political systems with Dr. Cothran. One of the things that I didn't even know is that we could look up Arkansas codes. I was totally oblivious to that fact, and so I appreciated being able to look up Arkansas codes, not only with education, but with anything that I have questions about. And I also noticed that a lot of these codes overlap with something in a different, it wouldn't just be under Title 6, it may be in a totally different area, but it still impacts education. So understanding how to look up those codes. And then how do those codes relate to current trends? As I was looking, I learned so much in my understanding of how the legal system operates, how these codes come to fruition, and then how do they relate to board policies that we have in place, and making sure that we can fall back on codes, looking at these Arkansas laws that are in place, and as long as we're following the law, when we're comparing that to board policies, then there should never be a question as long as we do exactly what we're supposed to according to the law. So I really appreciated that activity. In conclusion, I believe I have grown tremendously through my studies over the past 2 years. My experiences with this program and my experiences as a PPC member have empowered me to take ownership of my knowledge base. I have never been confident in my abilities as a teacher, but now more than ever, I am confident in my abilities not only to lead my students to this fountain of knowledge that awaits them, but also to lead my staff as they guide their students. I understand the significance that my position holds, and I'm anxious to prove myself fully capable of leading a building to student success. Personally, I am a first-generation college graduate who defied all odds as the daughter of a Guatemalan immigrant who quit school in the 7th grade and a poor American boy who dropped out of high school. And I want to use my story of success as an example to other students who experience hardship so they know they can do it too. I feel confident in my ability to pass the SLLA as a result of the way I've learned to think by way of the thorough coverage of the ELCC standards in my coursework. And I'm very thankful for my opportunity to complete this program with the tremendous support and patience that I've received from my professors, mentors, coworkers, students, and most importantly, my family. I hope that one day I'll be able to pay that support forward to other individuals who will be trekking the same path as I. So thank you all for the professional opportunities that await me, and thank you for the personal triumph that is being awarded to me as a lifelong learner.